men being the having to carry all of the burden, where women were viewed as
taking care of their parents, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
After they retire, blah blah blah. There's a town in Haryana, that's a state in India, where it's all men now. There are no women left to marry, and those guys are just growing older and older, and they're just still like.
It's a whole town of incels.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's what they don't tell you about.
And that's dangerous too, because if I may just finish that thought, it's adding to human trafficking of women. Now, what's happening is they're paying for women to be kidnapped from other states and be brought to that area and be forcibly married off.
Well,
Doesn't matter. Sometimes the age also doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, here it's interesting because I actually looked into it, and there's a. Generally speaking, in an ideal population, you have about 51% men and 49% women. That's sort of an ideal because men generally die younger. So, as the population gets older, it sort of just, it evens out like that. That's sort of how it generally works out.
Well, yeah, there's always going to be a fluctuation unless there's, some kind of external pressure, like killing all the women babies that you get.
Yeah, the fetuses,
Well, what they don't tell you about that, is that the one, like, I don't know how the Chinese government didn't predict that would happen, but it's sort of like,
they were gonna run out of women eventually.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like this, is that
the preferred child will be a male child, and then they will run out of female children. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's happened is that you combine two different things. You a one-child policy, plus the notion that only the men are obligated to take care of their parents when they're older.
Yeah, that's also very prevalent back home in India. That's a big social pressure, and if it's actually parents are shamed if a daughter ends up looking after her parents, that they're like, oh, she should be with her own family, she should be married by now with her own family, why are you living off your daughter's income or something. That
shaming
in China,
also. Yeah, and you can read it in China where parents sue their sons for not taking care of them.
Well, part of the
yeah, in China that happens where the parents sue their sons for not taking care of them.
Well, yeah, I can understand if, like, it happens in India sometimes. What happens is that parents, it's a joint family situation, but the son ends up, or the child that's actually living with the parents ends up ousting the parents out of their own property, and stuff like that, and then the parents going to court and suing to get their property back and something like that. But to sue your child for not taking care of you, there's something fundamentally wrong there. That means that you have been just raising a child as your retirement plan. How selfish is that?
Yeah. I mean,
how selfish is that?
I mean, it happens, sadly, but I mean, that's how it goes into. It's like if you have
it's like that
when you only expect one gender to be responsible for taking care of parents. I mean, and you only have one child policy.
Yeah,
so
why is any child expecting? Like, it might be a very controversial thought, but unless you're sick, why should a child be expected to look after parents? Like,
there is a degree of, like, once your parents are old enough that they can no longer do anything, there is an expectation as the closest family member as a child to be the one to go and check up on them, make sure they're okay.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But there's a difference between having, and this is one of the reasons
servant.
Right, but this is also one of the reasons why people are concerned about population growth, because if our generations are not producing enough children, then they are not going to be able to take care of the elderly's pension plan, meaning that they're going to be out of a house, meaning that they're going to be screwed. And that's because the forethought is on projected numbers, and those projected numbers are not matching what we're getting.
From the future generations, yeah, here we go.
I mean, well, like I said, with China and the one-child policy, I mean,
Are they really that wrong to be like not to expect the people, the individuals, to be so horrible as to throw away a child based on their gender? Like literally
No,
dumpster
you know
baby?
what they do is, if you do end up having an extra child, in cases of twins, what they do is they take away one of the twins and they give them up for adoption.
I mean, sure, but what I'm talking about is that is it wrong?
And the parents get penalized. Sorry, go on.
Is it wrong for the government to put this one-child rule in to not expect that their population is going to literally start dumpster babying all women?
I mean,
on its face? No.
Yeah, go on.
I mean,
well, in India, for example, it's illegal.
She said go on and then just went.
Sorry, my bad. I will just let you speak. I'll just finish this thought. In India, the preference of the male child and that expectation that's put on male child, it's there. Plus,
it's a social thing, yeah.
Even though, it's a social pressure, and it's funny how social pressure kind of overtakes what's lawful and not lawful, because it's illegal in India to detect the gender of the child. The doctors can lose their license in India if it's discovered that they are doing gender detections. But still, people end up doing that, and still, female feticides happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting, like how these prejudices find their way, through laws also.
Think about it like I've said. If you only, for example, if we reversed it where we said that only women were expected to take care of their elderly parents, I mean, you would notice that then right after that, men would just be being killed right out.
It depends on what the expectation is, because in that case you might end up with a double standard. There is a community in India that does that.
I'll talk about that later too. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just how, that's an economic pressure that you put on. If you can only have one child, then there's an expectation where the parents want to maximize that one child that they can have.
Right, and they also want the child to have the maximum amount of benefits that they can have. And so if women are at a disadvantage, and it's likely that child, because they're a woman, is not going to succeed or not be able to do what they need to do, including taking care of them at a later date, then
Mm-hmm.
give rights to women.
I mean,
right, exactly.
It's funny. I mean, I actually looked it up. In that whenever you have a population where the male female ratio is just way out of balance, you notice problems either way.
Right.
It's not just like if there's less women, it's also if there's less men in the population.
Yes.
There's problems that develop because typically, historically speaking, there is many times when there's just not enough men because of war. Like, for example, where men go to war and there'll just be so many men that are killed that the gender balance is just where it's like 4 or 5 women to every 1 man. And in that situation, what you generally happen is polygamy comes back in full force in that situation.
How come polygamy doesn't come back in full force when
it's prevalent right now in India? It happens.
Wait, hold on. That sounds like a double standard. Let me just hold up. I'm hearing a double standard here. This is a hypothetical, though. This is a hypothetical.
Okay.
So, if there's too many women and not enough men, polygamy's fine. But if there's too many men and not enough women, still not polygamy.
Okay, hold on. There's. I think so. In both spaces, there is a lot of room for exploitation of women for some reason. In both spaces.
Well, I mean, it also comes down to this way. It's like, I mean, many women don't like to hear about this, because men, we constantly have to hear about abusive men, which there are those men. They're assholes. I readily admit. But, I found that if I talk to women about gold diggers, fame whores, many women I tell about that sort of stuff, they say they look at me they look at me like deer in the headlights. Like I'm talking about this new breed of women that just came out recently, and they just find out no, these women have always existed.
There's a trope called a femme fatale that exists, like a man-eater.
Yeah, I mean. And let's think about it. Some women, like some cultures, like some women would rather be the fifth wife of a very rich man than say the only wife of a regular man.
The only thing that I find problematic in either of those cases is consent. The thing with gold diggers versus a more common domestic abuse victim, male or female, is that very rarely is this gold digger situation non-consensual. There are some. Yeah. There definitely are some where it's a young woman taking advantage of like somebody who is senile. Like somebody who's very, very old and cannot really be making these decisions. Yeah. That's sad. It's horrible. That's abusing the elderly. Don't do that. But there's also grooming that takes place the other direction, where the woman gets accused of being a gold digger because she's young, but she's actually getting taken advantage of because she's young and doesn't know any better.
There's that power dynamic there, and it can happen in cases of older women and younger men too. It can happen in that.
Yes. Oh, too. Absolutely. There is definitely cougars. Cougars are a thing. Cougars are a thing.
Yeah. So yeah. Again, but see, when it happens with women, it's taken. If I may dare say, it's taken seriously, and there's a lot of hue cry about it. But when it happens to boys, it's about it's a growing up moment for them, and they're supposed to take it on the chin, or
they're supposed to like
a trophy for them. Yeah, they're supposed to like it. So I think so. In India, there's an act called POXO or POSCO. I can't, for the love of my life. It's an abbreviation. So in which gender doesn't matter. If the child is a minor, it's being exploited. Man or woman can go to jail for it. Yep. And it has been brought into
I mean, I think that's what really needs to happen is like, my personal thing is whenever I hear about, let's say an older public school teacher having sex with a 12-year-old boy, I make, because they'll generally dress it up in the article. They'll say, woman, 30-year-old teacher has a sexual encounter with a 12-year-old boy.
Right.
As if this was just her going out on a date with a regular man.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's not cool.
Puking listening to that.
There's a, we need to stop gendering pedophilia? Probably?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether the person who is doing the attacking is female or male or trans or non-binary, whatever. Gender is irrelevant. Sexuality is irrelevant. Man on man, girl on girl, fucking relevant.
Yep.
Don't gender pedophilia.
Yeah, I mean,
it's less that too.
Plays into that bathrooms thing too. That
what's funny about it is that, like, we don't notice the difference is that, when men are sexually abused as children like that, especially by women, there's, you like it. But, what I find funny is that there is a reverse to that where they say, well, wait, are you saying that women can never, enjoy a situation like that? Like, so I mean...
Yeah, the women are supposed to be sexual objects. They can't be the perpetuator, right? So... they're supposed to be.
It's like women are not seen as like they're capable of enjoying a sexual encounter.
That's the thing.
Women.
The myth of the woman orgasm.
Yeah, society does this thing where sex happens to women, whereas sex for man is a conquest. And his reward is sex.
That's the word,
reward sex is the worst.
And you run into a lot of problems with that because people then turn it into not only just a game to play.
Yeah.
They start ignoring things like consent. They start pestering. They start harassing. And there are women who will just give into it. Yeah. And that's the problem with the mentality right there. That sex is something that happens to women, and for men it's a conquest. Is that you run into both of these things where women will be seen as not an abuser, not a rapist, because that's just something that happens to women. She would never go out and force it on somebody. Right. Whereas, again, with men, you see, she just didn't fight hard enough, and then, there's so many situations where that mentality has destroyed people completely.
Christ Puncher for 2 said, "Here's a toonie for some Timmies, eh?"
Boopity boop.
Yeah,
and I've
like in my situation where, you know, I was myself, I was sexually, emotionally, and physically abused by my ex. I was so grateful to get out of it myself, but you know, the dynamic is that, you know, like, she knew how I was raised. I was raised diehard chivalry, and you know, she would punch me, you know, kick me down there and stuff like that, just normally, and laugh about it.
Ugh.
Wow.
And say, you
oh,
know,
where have I heard that up before? Amber. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and you know, and she would say, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna hit me, big guy? You gonna hit me?" And I'm like,
"Ooh, you know, I hate when people do that." Fuck.
You know, that's I find, like, if you know someone has that sort of honor code or whatever, or just that general code, and you're taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I call that emotional abuse.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
Like,
it's definitely,
you know, you'll see videos of
physical and emotional hitting you and then daring you to hit them back. Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, it's like you see videos of that shit, of women literally beating the shit out of a dude, getting physical, taking their shoes off, hitting them with shoes, and then as soon as the man literally pushes the woman away, every single person is screaming at the man who was just abused, and then the man gets beat up by several other women. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
there's
how is that? How's that fair?
Happened. Yeah.
How is that okay?
It happened once. Yeah. There was this, I think, so chick who was so drunk. She was a doctor. I think so. This video went viral where she hired this Uber driver, and there was some altercation, and the Uber driver told this lady to get out of his car.
I know the one you're talking about.
And she went on a rampage. She just and she was getting in his face. She was. And what he did was, in the end, he pushed her back away from her, and because she was drunk and tipsy, she fell on the ground. I don't know, but that is self-defense for me, and that is what I would recommend a man to do. If a woman is getting in your face, push her away from you.
Yeah,
right?
but then you see,
most of the time, that guy, he didn't even touch the woman. He was walking away from her, and to get away from her, he got out of his car, and this woman got into his car and made a mess of his car, threw out his papers, whatever he had.
No, she meant,
and made a mess inside, and everybody was just standing there and just watching. Like, call the cops for fucking sake, and tell that girl to just stop. Like,
it's about,
I think so they were people. I think so they were telling her to stop.
It's about education. It's about people needing to learn and needing to understand that abuse is universal. It does not matter, and that there are ways of handling it. How do you approach that? And I think a lot of men don't know what to do when a woman comes at them physically. Right? And so you do end up in this situation where, okay, I've had this talk before a couple of times. I think chivalry is sexist. Not because it's all bad. Not because it's all negative things. It's like, it's chivalrous to hold a door for a woman. Just hold the door and be polite. Chivalry should be about being polite to anybody, not to a woman. As soon as you make it about gender, you've made it sexist.
Yeah. Or like, opening the door for your loved one. That's opening the door for your loved one. Anybody in any kind of relationship can do that. If you're first at a door and you hold it open for people, that's super sweet. But why does it have to be, gendered? So I completely get that.
Chivalry originally was a military ethic.
I heard it was a knight's code.
The knight could be considered the military at the time period.
Yeah, but, and that's how it originally was, where there was a code where, that would be how the knights would have to treat the serfs of the day, where, in order to keep order, and eventually, later on, I can't remember, it was a queen or something, took that and married it to the concept of romantic, the relationships.
Yeah, the way men should treat women. And again, we're back in a time period where women didn't have shit.
Well, I mean, and also, well, I mean, here's the thing: is like, men have always, I think, there is some evolutionary psychology behind it, but men have always wanted to protect women. That's just sort of
it's
how
testosterone.
Yeah, I don't think that's about women.
Also.
I also don't think that's about women. I think that's about protecting group.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like this. It's that,
families.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like this in a way, is that I say about, I'm trying to think how to word it correctly, but it comes with, the fact of the matter is that, to a certain extent, tens of thousands of years ago, it was necessary for men to be somewhat disposable, because that was simply...
Men would go out and hunt and acquire other land for agricultural purposes, so women were left behind as the setting stone for, for the property.
It was disposable in different ways.
It wasn't about rights, it was about obligations, and it was about survival.
It was about survival, and it was about being effective, right? So it was men were effective in this, and women were effective in this, right? So because women, and because the differences were maybe not even necessarily any greater, but the need for those differences was greater. So even if a woman might have been just as good or just as useful as hunting, it was more beneficial because they could, feed the children. They're able to stay back and feed the children because feeding the children was a primary concern that needed to get done. Women have a tendency of being more dexterous than men. That tends to be why women's gymnastics is higher watched, right? It's a higher watched versus the male gymnastics. It doesn't mean the men are any less interesting to watch. It doesn't mean they're any worse. The reason why the women would be staying home is because they're more dexterous. They can build the tools easier. They can weave the baskets easier. They can do the farming easier and the tending to those things because they're naturally more dexterous. Whereas men, having a higher endurance when it came to walking or running, ended up, because the need for those things was so much so much of a difference. Not necessarily because one was too much better than the other. A woman can take pretty much just as much damage as a man. It only becomes a problem when you start getting to elite sports. Only then does that difference start becoming problematic or start becoming important, right? In day-to-day life, if I get tossed down a hill and a man gets tossed down a hill, we have equal chances of taking the exact same amount of damage. No, they're not going to be able to tell.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Both are dead. Both dead. Tossing down the hill.
Or we're both alive. That happens.
Like I said, if you cut off a man or a woman head, they're both equally dead.
Yeah, or you cut off an arm, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Originally, tens of thousands of years ago, it was more of a survival-based mechanism.
Yeah.
It wasn't about what was fair. It wasn't about, do I prefer to be like this? It was because we literally had no other choices. We had to survive. And
right. And that disparagement meant more than it does nowadays. It doesn't mean as much now. It doesn't matter if you can walk an extra 5 minutes than I can. It's completely irrelevant. But once upon a time, that fucking mattered.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it might matter in, military and stuff, but then you can train women to catch up onto that. You can train women to do that if you want.
There's different niches within those things, right? So if you're going to take, for example, the idea that, we should be... the fire department should be forced to hire a woman. Okay, that isn't concept that can be discussed because there are reasons why you would want that and why you might not want that. The point is that they're a team and they're a unit. Because I've heard people make the argument that, I don't want this 90-pound woman trying to drag a 200-pound man out of a burning building. It's that's because that's not her job. They're a team. Her job is to get into places that the man can't get into because he's too large. Her job is to... Right, her job is to do this or to do that. It's not... A one firefighter doesn't come to deal with your burning house. They're a unit.
4 people who end up making a makeshift mattress for the victim and carry them out. So those 4 people can be 2 women, 2 guys, or even 4 women all together. So yeah.
You also end up in a situation where the woman might have an easier time strapping something up because they're just that much more dexterous. Right?
I mean, you know,
she has been knitting more sweaters.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, you know, like we go into is that, you know, at one point it was necessary for men to be sort of disposable because, I mean, it is a constant thing because, you know, one man can theoretically, you know, populate an entire village by himself, or like a small group of men can. But while, you know, if let's just say you have a
woman's only going to have one baby a year,
I mean, imagining like you have a society of 1,000 people. If you know, 50 men that like let's say a couple hundred men that die in that society, that doesn't mean as much because the other guys can just take over. They can populate.
As in, you only need one man. You only need one man. Versus several women, because one man can impregnate more than one woman.
Yeah, well,
I get what you're saying with that, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to say?
You end up in this situation where you've got how many children can a woman have in a year versus how many women can a man have in a year.
365.
Yeah, so I mean,
at least.
If you don't want to work on a Sabbath, that's another thing, though. But yeah.
How many times can a dude jerk off in a day?
Sperm's cheap, but eggs are expensive.
Right?
Yeah.
How many times can a dude jerk off in a day? If his only job is to jerk off and
right.
Okay.
365 into 2.
Right, okay, so assuming only 2 in a whole day?
I'm just going for minimum number, okay? Average minimum number.
I'm gonna say average is 5. If that's all he's doing. All he's doing is jerking off. I would think that
365 into
times.
5. That's like that's like 15,000 plus 65 into 5 something.
And how many kids can a woman have in a year?
Just one.
Yeah, so I mean that's why you get, you know, so it makes sense in that time frame where, you know, men would be more disposable because, you know, if half your men die, like in say a war, I mean the other men, the other half, you know, can easily take over.
I mean, it kind of depends on the society, right? It also depends,
well, true. I mean, I'm saying like in general, but if half of your women die, then you fucked. What were we talking about earlier with Japan and China having? Yes. So I mean, that's where it becomes difficult.
Yeah, you definitely end up with problems in both scenarios because you end up if you end up in a situation where it's like, oh man, I've got to
contribute to exploitation of women and men.
I've got to replace these warriors and these soldiers. Are they just fodder or are they officers? Like, how well are they trained? Because losing them is a giant pain in the ass. But then again, if you lose an entire fucking village of everybody, you're gonna be like, how do we repopulate?
Oh shit.
So I mean,
Japan has some really unique problems with
people don't want to marry, people don't want to reproduce. They're just like, I'm happy in my little corner, thank you very much.
Honestly, and it's not even that like they're overworked, which they are. That's a very, very bad problem in Japan. Is that
that's
people
actually
literally
a cause of infertility. I think so. One of the causes of infertility. Yes.
Well, not just that, but these people are literally working themselves to death, and more specifically, it's actually a more of a man problem. Men are literally having, people, but the larger percentage is men, are literally having heart attacks because they're working so much. At 20, at like 20, 30 years old, they're having heart attacks and dying. But that's not just the only reason why Japan isn't having kids. It's
stress also lowers your libido.
I think I heard something about, you know, in general, like I think in America, I don't know if this transfers over to Japan, but I know in America the testosterone and sperm rate or something is going down for men.
Well, no, it's just it's literally they're being raised to focus on their careers, and they just don't want to have kids because why have kids when I can just, live my life?
Having a relationship and having children and raising children is all work. All of that is work. Yeah. So if you're taught
Here, somebody said it. Here we go.
If you're
somebody tell that to my parents.
If you're taught to if you're taught that you need to focus on your career, you need to make as much money as possible, you need to do this, and this, who the hell has time for dating? This is one of the problems I have with politics. It's like, who the hell has time for politics when you gotta work 40 hours a week, and then have your family, and then have your yard work, and then maintain your house and your living situation? Like, who the fuck has time? And with both people working 40 hours a week, assuming they're even on the same shift, who the hell has time for anything?
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally...
And then you get in...
with where they're both partners are just really working each other hard. And, I mean, it comes to the point like, well, where's the time for us to do anything together?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or where's the energy too?
Lazy as sex.
Because both people are working. Yeah.
Too tired.
And then you also run
times.
into like the sexism that comes in with that is where the man and the woman will work. Both of them will. But then the woman comes home and she has to clean, cook, make sure the kids are ready for bed. And even then, even if she doesn't work, she's still doing that anyway.
Well, I mean,
but then
that also goes with the men too as well, because some men, they'll come home and their woman says, "Oh, well, you need to help, fix my car, that we have, and you have to help fix this and this and this appliance in the house."
Yeah, you run into this problem where there's this expectation, and it shouldn't be an expectation. Yes. It's a joint venture, right? So
yes. So
it's not about, like, if your expectation is... I've seen this, and I'm only bringing this up because I recently read a story about this, and it was essentially a situation where this woman was not allowed to have a day off. She was a stay-at-home mom, but they had 4 kids. The youngest one was 2, and the oldest one was, 10. And so she got up at 6:30 in the morning so she could have coffee, get breakfast ready, wake everybody up, get everybody ready and off to work and off to school, take care of the 2-year-old and the other one that wasn't in school yet, I think. It was 2 and 4 or something. Take care of them throughout the day, then make sure there were snacks, and then lunch, and then people got home from school, help people with their homework, entertain the younger kid, clean 1 room a day, and 1 deep clean a day, then clean everything else in a general sweep throughout the day. Dude gets home from work, does nothing. It's like...
Holy crap.
Because he works...
Unpaid labor,
because he worked 8
hours.
Sake,
anyone.
Because he worked 8 hours that day. So then the weekends would come, and he would be taking time off, and he would get to play with the kids, and he would get to spend time with the kids, because that's a problem. If the man is expected to be out of the house doing all the work all the time, and then doesn't get to bond or spend time with his kids, that's a huge deal. That's devastating. You miss your kid's first step because you're fucking getting your ass beat at work all day? That's awful. Yeah. And I think people underplay the how sad and depressing that is, and then you end up with these situations where men are not struggle to connect with their kids, and it's awful, and they don't know what to do, and the kid doesn't know what to do because they don't know how to communicate because they haven't been around each other.
My bonded over chemistry. We would go for walks, and he would test me on my organic chemistry when we would go for walks. That's what the bonding time was.
That, I mean, basically, if you have the expectation of men where men are, seen, they're obligated to be the breadwinner. They don't have it, and with many men is that they don't really get the choice in it, where they say, hey, you know what, I would like to be, stay at home and take care of my child. But then the minute that they say that, they say, oh, well, you're a dead, you're not going to really work.
A deadbeat dad,
I heard a story.
Even though you're saying that, hey, look, I want to take care of my children. I want to be there. I don't want.
They're shamed for not working and staying at home and looking after kids.
One of the ones that I find is really subtle and really disgusting is when a man is at the playground with their kid by themselves. So it's just the dad and it's the kid.
And they're looking for the mom, and they're like, where's the mom? Where's the mom?
Well, people are looking like the dad like he's some kind of creep, and it's like, he's there with his kid. Why are you... What the fuck?
Oh, it happened here in New Zealand. One of the fathers, he was using the baby changing rooms for his little toddler, and there was this woman who started shouting at him. yeah, this is for women and their kids and dads are not allowed. And he's like, I'm a parent, look at changing my toddler's diaper for fuck's sake. Like, what the fuck?
That's not cool.
Yeah.
That's so not
really,
cool.
You know,
Again,
is...
that perpetuality that only a male can be a predator, but can't be a nurturer. Like,
Right.
No,
Yeah.
but that's
the
isn't
21st
that
century,
funny
for
though?
fuck's sake.
Okay, so there's a problem with there not being changing rooms for men, but why is it now when men are single parenting their kids, is it becoming a problem that there's no changing room in the thing? The only time I've ever seen anyone other than a woman complain that there's no changing rooms in the men's bathroom is when a man is like having visitation with their children. It's so sad.
There's this bizarre thing where it's this women are maternal thing isn't just bad for women. We need to focus also on that there is a whole other problem, that if women are maternal and can't be the problem in the relationship, you've got this whole second half of the population that's like, but I want to spend time with my kid, but I want to go to the park and not get looked at and treated like I'm a creep. I don't want to be treated poorly because I decided to have kids and I want to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
or I'm useless.
There's definitely an issue that comes with men, where men are treated like, men that just want to throw the ball at their son, are seen, sort of like predatory. And I'm like, the guy's trying to, like, especially if he's a divorced
like, put their daughter in a swing and push the daughter on a swing. Like, it's looked at some sort of, like, creepy behavior, like,
he's just trying to be a dad.
Yeah.
I don't see that as much.
But there's some people who are, like, still stuck in the, whatever, 18th century.
There's an interesting story.
I don't think I've heard much of that problem. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody complain that somebody's come up to them and said, hey, you're creepy.
It's usually not that somebody says anything, it's that they're getting these dirty and weird looks, and people have definitely called the cops before. To be like, hey, there's this weird guy hanging around the children's park, and it's like, he's a dad. What are you doing?
Is that your child?
He's a parent, for fuck's sake.
Is that your child, sir? Where did you get that child? Where's your mommy?
Yep.
Yeah, where's your mommy? Like, they don't ask that from a woman. Like, hey, is that your mommy? Where's your daddy?
Well, then at some point, okay, so when I was a kid, kids say stupid shit too, right? Like, so they're not helpful. They're little drunken potato sacks. When I was a kid, I was running around outside, and I ran over to the neighbors because they were all just hanging out, and I just yelled, "Mommy beats Daddy." Nobody was hitting anybody. They were playing a game, and my dad and my mom won. That was it.
Oh, they must be having a pillow fight or something, and you're like, "Oh, mommy beats daddy."
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Kids are stupid as shit.
Kids
They're not helpful. Where's your mom?
They can be very honest and, like, really stupid at the same time.
Worst case scenario, you've got, like, some poor single parent, single dad who's a widower, who's at the park with his son. The cops get called, and then they ask the kid, "Where's your mommy?" "Oh, she's gone. She's been gone for a long time. I haven't seen her." Fuck!
Yeah, you make the child relive all that stupid shit again.
Well,
Thank
you make
you
the child
very
relive all
much.
that, but now the cop is like, so this kid is kidnapped and by this dude.
Yeah, I've heard that problem also. A dad in a biracial relationship. His children are paler than him, and he's had the cops called on them. I've heard that happen with mothers too.
And also it's funny, like, how this whole kidnap thing, when this happens, it's how that using that to their advantage, women are able to take their children away from their father to other countries and leave the father behind, and the father ends up fighting for the custody in an international custody battle. For years, it has happened before.
That's
just all because, where's your mommy? Your daddy's not supposed to be with you. You're supposed to be with your mommy. And it's okay for a woman, even when there have been court orders that the women are not supposed to take the children. Men do that. They do that. It's a power play. Men do that, but women do that too. And then they use that as a power play against men. It happens in both genders. Both can be assholes. Thank you very much.
It's a bad time.
What happens? Another case that really happens is that we don't really notice is that in at least a current modern day America, father's rights really only extend as far as the woman in the relationship wants them to extend.
Okay. If we're gonna start talking about the fact that women will get custody and more custody and main custody of the children, whereas the dads get visitation rights, that is sexist. It is because the woman is seen as the better option because women are meant to mother and nurture children. Yeah. So I don't want to hear about that because that is incredibly sexist and it's something that is a massive problem.
It's a matter of we're back to this is bad for both parties. Women being viewed as maternal figures is bad for men. And women, it's bad for everybody.
I also like to tell you that originally speaking, that in a more patriarchal culture, it was the men that would get the children more than the women because men were seen as having the financial obligation.
Well, they weren't just seen, though. They weren't just seen as the people who had the resources. They were the only people who were allowed to have the resources.
Yeah. Like the women, women couldn't even find jobs. That's why the divorce rate has gone up because women now have jobs, so they can leave their husbands who are abusing them. This is not a men versus women. It's stuff is shifting, and it was shit for both parties type of thing.
Yeah, it's a matter of go ahead.
People don't a common thing that people don't really think about is that I remember whenever I bring up arranged marriages, for example, is that I ask what's the problem with arranged marriages? Just as a hypothetical, and people will say, well, what if the woman doesn't like the man? I've never once heard the opposite. Well, what if the man doesn't like the woman?
Is that not because of the way that okay, so as far as my understanding goes, we should probably wait till Monty gets back because I think she has a little bit more information on this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The man is already making a decision on the woman.
Yeah.
The woman doesn't get a say, period.
It's not the culture, really, but
I'd rather ask Mania because I'm not sure, but from my understanding, it's usually the man, the woman's family is going to the man's family and say, hey, do you like our daughter? And convincing them to go with this daughter, and sometimes they have more than one family that comes in to do that. So the man is making a choice. Now, to be fair, once the arranged marriage is settled and they all do it, they might not like it after the fact. Mania, we're talking about arranged marriages, and I'm asking you because I'm racist and you're from India, so I want to know if maybe you have more information on this.
Two situations. In most of your middle-income families, it depends on income also, and it depends on which profession you're in, because for example, in politics and in business, a guy might not get a choice because it's a business merger of families. So
okay. So the woman doesn't get a choice, the man doesn't get a choice because this is the parents above have made this decision for them because they're the ones operating the business. Understood.
Yeah, both cases.
But if it's a general thing, like a middle-income family, generally the guys get to choose from a number of girls. It used to happen. Now slowly it's happening that girls also get a choice, but generally girls are always told you have to compromise a bit. I was always told when these arranged marriages happen, Manya, it's always the woman who ends up compromising, and I used to hate it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, another thing is people would say that in many cultures where arranged marriages happen is that whereas it was seen as that men would have a choice, in theory, where it says, all right, you have a choice. In practice, not really, because, many times at birth, if it's a business sort of arrangement, this has been planned from their birth, that this is who they're going to be.
Yeah, we're back to that 1%.
Politics, business and politics.
And what happens is that while the man, in theory, has the choice where he can give up the woman and go with another person, in practice, he really can't because
Oh, after the marriage is over.
What happened to Prince Charles? Did we see what happened with Prince Charles? He was in love with Camilla, but he couldn't marry Camilla because of the class differences and their status differences. He was a prince, she was, I think so, a commoner, blah, 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 blah. I think that was the story, but he couldn't marry her. Then he had to find someone else to marry, and then everybody was ruined in that marriage.
Yeah, I mean, well, what happened is like, you know, so... Whereas men wouldn't, while men would theoretically have a choice, it would not be in practice because in order for the man to opt out, he would have to basically say that he would have to dishonor his family.
Or justify it. Or he'd have to justify it. So
and then like once it can happen. Yeah, there's an illusion of choice. I can support that because once the engagement is done, you can't get out of it. It's going to dishonor the family. For example, once the engagement is done, especially in Indian culture, it's such a fast-track thing that it's actually after the engagement or after the marriage has been finalized, the asshole in each of the boy and the girl starts coming out, and then you suddenly realize, oh, we are not compatible, but now you can't say no or opt out of it because it's going to cause embarrassment to the family or dishonor the family. I know when I broke off my engagement twice, my parents were by my side, but the relatives, oh fucking lord.
There's also something to be said for
it's
men.
An illusion of choice.
Well, that's the thing with men. I might go for a little bit more. Like after the fact, everybody's fucked, right? But during ahead of time, the man still doesn't have freedom. He has a choice. But he doesn't have freedom. Yeah. So he's still screwed in the fact that he may be able to pick between these women, but he doesn't know anything about them, or very little about them. Or like, when you get married and things change. That happens in a lot of abusive relationships. A lot of abusive relationships, you're not choosing to marry somebody who's abusive. You don't know that they're abusive. Right?
Yeah, I have firsthand experience in that.
Men are still not free to marry whoever they want in an arranged marriage. They're still stuck with whatever options are given to them in the arrangement. It's like I'm not allowed to eat whatever food I want. I have to choose from this specific diet, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, it can, with some men in some cultures, it can be more of an illusion of choice where it's more choice than the woman has, but in theory get out of it, but
still bad.
Not really, because in order for him to get out of it, he has to basically say, oh, my parents don't know anything about me, they don't know what makes me happy, they don't, he basically has to dishonor his family before he can get out.
Yeah,
or justify it, right? Like cheating or something.
Yeah, again, the illusion of choice in the class and caste kind of thing. In India, it would come down to caste also, because then you have limited choices, right?
Yeah.
These are the girls. You can't find any you can't choose any other girl out of this circle because they're not of our economic status. They don't belong to our caste, or they belong to the lower caste.
It's like the exact opposite
of
the. It's like the exact opposite of the incel problem, where the incels say that women are always marrying up, whereas when it comes to arranged marriages, it's the other way around, where men are always wanting to marry a woman of a higher status than where they're at. What a flip!
It's acceptable for a guy to marry a woman of the higher status, but a guy of a higher status marrying a woman from a lower status, that's frowned upon because, well, you are rich, how can you marry someone? Or it happens because there's room for exploitation, and blah, blah, blah. Dowry system. Now, there are two types of dowry system. One, which comes under general Hindu traditions, and the other one, which comes under Islamic traditions. Both are abused. Let me just tell you about, both can be abused. And in the Islamic dowry, traditions, it's the men who end up suffering because they are the ones who pay the dowry to marry the woman. In the Indian tradition, it's the women who pays the dowry to marry the man. It's like you're paying to get married. Yeah, it's complicated. If anyone wants to have a talk to me about that, I can. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what people don't realize is that, like, the purpose, at least from what I know about when I go back to ancient Near Eastern societies and I look at how they did it, the purpose of the dowry system was to ensure that the woman would be taken care of by a financially capable man. And it was not uncommon for women to compete with each other to see who could get, like, a higher dowry.
Oh yeah, it was a competition. I am more worthy because I'm more beautiful and I got more money than you. I can pay the dowry, you know.
Look at these childbearing hips, though. I can pop out like 7 more kids than you can.
Yeah. So I mean,
and boys.
It definitely, you know. So I mean, on one hand, you get that expectation where it's to give a woman a financially capable man, but also it also sets the expectation where if you're a man and you can't afford the dowry, then you're basically worthless to the society. Consider it.
Right, and that
it both fucked up, so fucked up.
There's no winning.
Yeah, and it's also like this
thing.
pressure is put on men. You know, as soon as you get married in some cultures, the next thing is, when are you getting a kid? When's my granddaughter or grandson coming? When's my grandchild coming? And that pressure is put on both men and women it's just going off like that. So yeah,
I mean that just happens normally.
And I think so. Maybe if I may dare say, let me take that wild guess. In today's times, it's acceptable if women are infertile. And the shaming is becoming less and less.
It's getting there.
Let me just
it's
say,
getting better.
Acceptance is there more than males. If the males are infertile, they're
I
laughing.
barely ever hear that even
Mm.
talked about. I barely even hear that ever talked about. Now that could be a bad thing or a good thing depending on the situation, but very rarely.
Where I come from, it's a third world country. Let's say, multicultural society.
I thought India was a second world country. I thought it had both.
Ooh.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Because like Mexico is a second world country because it has places where it's like a third world country, and then
I'm quoting
places
like
where it's
10 years ago.
Does that mean America's a second world country, and so is Canada? And Canada's listen, our internet and our telecommunications is worse than a third world country. It's awful.
Found it, it's just funny. It's like, as a guy myself, I mean, I've lived in both ghettos and trailer parks, in my time frame. So I found it funny because, I lived it, and obviously since I'm white and living in a ghetto, I'm obviously going to stand out from the vast majority of people. But from my time living in both trailer park and ghettos, I noticed the cultures are very familiar.
They've got similarities. It's because it's a class issue. At the end of the day, people are people, and why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? Basically, it means that there isn't that much of a difference. Classism is far more of a problem than pretty much historically anything else. If you're talking about like social pressures, and like that's not to say that racism isn't a problem or isn't a thing, but a lot of racism stems from classism, and a lot of current racism,
that's the
especially
thing, is that,
in America,
is that racism, in a lot of instances, is literally just
I need to see my hairy ass legs
better than somebody else.
Look at that! I haven't shaved in ages.
I mean, this might sound, controversial for me, but, I've always said, with sexism, homophobia, racism, and all that, to me, the problem comes with it is when it's endorsed by the government.
Right. That's
when
a whole other problem.
Like, to me, for example, there are ableists, legitimately people out there that believe autistic people should be killed.
Yeah, that's no good.
And guess what? I'm autistic, and you know how much those people worry me on a daily basis? Not much.
Or they use autism and like ADHD and neurodivergence as a way to like a pawn Like anti-vaxxers.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll use
Don't get me started on that.
We can't. We don't have time for that rabbit hole today. Another day. We're actually getting to the end of our time, so we should probably.
Well, no, it's like I was listening to
She's doing it anyway.
Anti-vaxxer because someone was making fun of her, of course, and she said that the ADHD, which is what I have, is one of the side effects of vaccinations, and I was just like, I'm not your fucking pawn. Like,
right.
I can't imagine what autistic people must feel
just like
about being used as a pawn as well. Yeah,
exactly. Pro-life people do, anti-abortion people do. Use children as a pawn, especially people with neurodivergence. Like, tell me about
manipulation.
Right.
I mean, I think it is, like, to me, my problem with all those, like, the forms of bigotry is when they're endorsed by the government.
Oh,
yeah. We should save that for another day, though, because I know Sweet was not able to make it today. Unfortunately, she got caught up in a different... I know I didn't mention at the beginning that we had 4 of us anyway, and I also didn't know until we'd already started. So I am now aware and can now inform you Sweet was unfortunately unable to make it due to some scheduling conflictions. So... she does want to come on, and I know she wants to come on with our guest today, Mr. Brass, so I think we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point and talk about this even a little bit more, and I think then we can start getting into some of the government stuff. Exactly. In fact, hold on, I'm going to make a note. Government endorsing or encouraging. I have to sound things out like I'm 7.
Me too. It's okay.
Bigotry. Sweet, that'll be a fun topic. Woohoo! So yes, what do you guys all got for kind of wrapping up a little bit, just because we're starting to get over time, because it's good conversation. It's good conversation, right?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I would say I liked the conversation. It was nice getting to talk to you guys and getting to really delve into some problems, and I'm glad that we could both come to realize that there are problems that both, like, the sexes face. And I think that, having mutual respect with each other over these sort of topics is a very well thing to have. I had a lot of fun.
Not getting heated over small things.
Yeah.
Puck's got sleepy zoomies.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, is he like swimming in his sleep or something like that, paddling? Sorry, I got distracted. But it's an interesting conversation, and it's how as a society we have started realizing that men face the same men face the same pressures and issues as women do.
It seems to me that there's a problem when it comes to if one part is sexist against one party, even though it's against one group, it causes problems for all other groups. It's bad for everyone. Things that are bad for men are bad for women. Things that are bad for women are bad for men. Why? Because we all live together. Things that are bad for trans people is bad for everybody. Things that are bad for non-binary people is bad for everyone. Things that are racist are bad for all races. It's shit. It's bad for everybody. Nikki, what do you got?
Lady who did that experiment, with making people realize who are in positions of entitlement that, and she asked this question to the audiences. Okay, people, if you want to be treated same as the other side, please stand up. And nobody stood up because they knew there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny.
I mean, personally, I think what will make the thing coming, I think what would really help both sexes if they come to realize that they're, like, we need to renegotiate the contract that we've done before.
Yeah.
And we need to realize that there are benefits both sides have, and we need to be able to say, well, how are we going to do society now that we're changing and we're evolving? past standards that we used to have.
Yeah, it's about an evolving social structure and how evolution, even biological evolution, is affected by social evolution and social pressures. Nikki, what do you got for us?
I think that probably one of the best things said tonight is what you literally just said, is that this sexism, this bigotry toward one side is bad for everybody, and you see it in almost every part of life. And the only thing you can really say is, my biggest thing when people are trying to tell you that they're having problems societally, if a group of people are trying to come forward and let you know, let it be men who are being abused, whether it's people of color that are telling you, just shut up and listen. Just be quiet and listen. And just open your mind and open your heart, because the way to combat ignorance and stupidity and hatred is knowledge and education and compassion. And that's what changed my mind. I used to be a conservative, right, pro-life, racist person who is also religious. And it literally took me taking a step back and shutting my mouth and listening to people for me to change my mind. Compassion and understanding and love will always win out, and just try to take a second if you feel defensive, if you're like, oh, I can't accept that. I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. I'm not this. Just be quiet and listen to what they have to say, because 9 times out of 10 you will learn something. And that is more important than anything else, is learning and listening and having compassion.
Yeah, and just to take us out, on the other side of that, don't accuse people of things. Sometimes people are just ignorant. They don't realize that what they're doing is harmful towards you. They don't realize that they're necessarily part of the problem. And unless they can listen, you're not gonna change anybody's mind if you're saying, oh, hey, you're sexist, and dismissing them. Listening comes from both sides, and sometimes you have to, at least when it comes to communication, it's not a competition. And if anybody is going to take anything out of this, it's not a competition. This is not a men versus women issue. This is people are assholes, and those assholes need to stop being assholes because they're assholes to people. Misogyny towards women is bad for men. Sexism towards men, anti-men stuff, is bad for women. That doesn't help anybody. Listen to each other, try to communicate, do your best not to be accusatory, and, Nikki's right. Listen, communicate, and do your best.
Shut up and listen, and it's not a competition. Here we go.
Say bye, everybody. Bye!
Bye, everyone.